The crime of trafficking is prolific in our backyards. Right now, in every community, there are children that are being taken, that are being lured, that are being snatched online and within the walls of your own home. What does Elite do? It does everything that we can to prevent, intervene, and to restore the lives of those that have been harmed by the crime of trafficking. You might be asking, why did we start Elite? And it was something very personal, very dear to my heart. I come from a history of exploitation, so I said that it would never happen in my household, and yet it did. The crime of trafficking was able to touch beyond the walls of my own home into the life of my 15-year-old daughter. It devastated our family dynamics for a period, and was it not by the grace of God that we were able to save her? But how many children have lost their lives to the crime of trafficking? Thousands. As a matter of fact, it is estimated that 3 children are losing their lives to the crime of trafficking as we're speaking right now, because it happens every minute of every day. The U.S. is the #1 consumer of sex in the world. Let that sink in. The #1 consumer. I don't like that ranking for this country, nor do I like what it stands for. It means that there are children that are being used for sexually exploitive materials online and in brothels and in all kinds of settings in order to be exploited from their innocent for profit. We are in a culture of abuse. We're in a culture of greed. We're in a culture where our kids are being sexualized from a very, very young age. It is ripe for evil, and we have to do something to stop it. Join Elite. It ends with us. We need to end the demand.
I have an urgent message for you men, for all men everywhere, for everyone who will listen to me. And the urgent message is simply this: men are the problem. I hope that's not a newsflash. Men are actually the problem. Well, and you might be saying, but wait, which problem are you talking about? To which I would say, pick one. I'm not sure I could find a problem that you could trace back to human roots and have not a bunch of knucklehead men behind it causing it. Men are the problem. We are the problem. Well, given the general topic of this event, let's get a little more specific. I've coined it this way. This problem, the specific problem we're going to talk about tonight and at this event, is the exploitive, abusive culture where women and children are abused up to and including being trafficked for sex. Wow, that's a mouthful. What in the world is that? What I do know is that men are the problem, and men are actually a big part of this particular problem. Let's talk about the problem of trafficking. And I'm using trafficking and child trafficking as the worst example of men gone wrong. But there's lots of different steps up until the point you get to the place where children are being trafficked for sex. Most men would say, oh my gosh, that's incredibly brutal. No way. There's no way I'm part of that. I'd like to have an honest, frank conversation with us all. Did you know that there's at least 300,000 children, minors, US-born American citizens, being bought and sold, being trafficked, being controlled and owned by a third-party person, telling them what to do, where to go, when to do it, and literally being violated in a sexual manner a dozen or more times every single day. The average age of entry is some 12 to 13 years old. That's the average age. At Saving Innocence right now, we're currently taking care of a little 10-year-old. We just celebrated her birthday. I could go on and talk about what's happening sort of from an academic standpoint, I guess. But what I thought would be maybe particularly interesting and powerful tonight is to hear some real voices. These are real statements from real survivors, ones that I personally know. A good friend of mine who's been on our staff at Saving Innocence said this: I was forced to sleep with between 7 and 15 men every single night. And that horror started at age 11 for her. She went on to say, by the time I was 12 years old, I had already been raped 4,000 times. This is happening in our country. This is happening right under our noses to our kids, in our communities. Another 15-year-old survivor said, I had no choice. It was survival. Honestly, I don't know that I've ever actually been in a true survival situation. I didn't choose to go into the military or law enforcement. I wasn't a fireman on a roof with a burning building. I don't know that I've ever actually had to make a decision that depended on whether in fact I was going to live or die. These dear survivors that we know have told us repeatedly that this is a true survival situation. They're literally doing whatever it is they have to do to get through that day, to be alive by the end of the day, and then do it all again the next day. Absolutely horrible. One 15-year-old survivor that we work with, in a moment of vulnerability and frankly hysterics, says to our advocate through her tears, I just want to be treated like a human being. Is that too much to ask? Is it too much to ask that we would provide an environment and a culture and a society where our children could be treated like human beings? See, she's getting at something very powerful that we all have to wrestle with for a moment. When a child or an adult is in the process of being trafficked, they are being owned and controlled by another person. They are actually becoming a slave. Trafficking is called the modern-day slavery. And there are more people currently enslaved through human trafficking today in the world than at any other time in human history. And they are treated like a commodity to be bought and to sold and to traded. And early on, one of the steps that happens when they begin this horrific life, they get branded just like they were a cow to signify ownership and who owns it. And this child, in a moment of honesty, said, can we just start here? I just want to be treated like a human. Someone who's become a friend of mine since I heard her say this was going in the process in college, being trafficked. And she said, after 5 months, I could no longer fight for myself. She'd given up, waved the white flag. I can't do this anymore. This is what my life has become, and there is no escape. There's no way out. I could no longer fight for myself. Well, as I stated a few minutes ago, men are most definitely the problem. By far, the most buyers are men. By far, the most sellers, the traffickers, are men. There are women involved, but the vast majority of the people buying sex and abusing children and adults through this manner are men. I'm just assuming that somewhere in the auditorium or at home, wherever you might be watching this, there's a bunch of men that are saying, but wait a minute, what are you talking about? I'm not buying children for sex. Are you kidding me? I'm not buying an adult for sex. That's absolutely ridiculous. I'm with you. I'm against it. You're not talking to me. And my word to you tonight, to all of us, is that if you're not going so far as renting another human to spend some time with, I would like to challenge you with the idea that we have all, knowingly or unknowingly, been part of an abusive culture that has led all the way up into the place where people are buying sex. We as men have contributed to the conditions which cause that to happen. It would be a big mistake to say, you're not talking to me, because I am talking to all of us. Think about the fact of the kind of conversations that you have had, do have. Think about the kind of jokes maybe that you've participated in, laughed at. Think about the kind of music that you may have listened to, purchased, or allow in your home. When you're home at night tonight, when this program is over, just do me a favor, Google up some kind of a phrase that says, demeaning lyrics about women in songs, and just see what comes up. Some of the most successful, powerful entertainers in the country and the world are making a living demeaning children, demeaning women, all the way up to the point of violent sexual behavior. That's what our little boys and our little girls are being trained on. Some of the most recognizable names in our society. What kind of music are we participating in? What kind of websites are we visiting? I would like to propose to as many men as I can get to listen, an army of men, that we would live our life through a new filter, not somewhere in the background, right in the foreground. Every decision we make, every show we watch, every media we consume, every person we vote for, all of it runs through the filter. Is this honoring, serving, and protecting women? If it's not, get out, go away, say no, stop. And let that be reflected in the music, in the jokes, in the conversation, the movies we go to, the websites we visit.
It's 12:3. Here's the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God will bring every deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether it's good or evil. I encourage men to step up to the challenge of being men, being fathers. With 19.7 million fatherless families right here in the United States, we have a problem. I can't think of anything that's going on in our society that if men was doing their job, that it would be a problem. And I'm talking about the things that's happening with kids. I'm talking about dropout prevention. I'm talking about the low rates of reading among our kids in our community. We're talking about the things that's happening to our women and our children. If we could challenge men to step up and be a man and let their voices be heard and their presence felt in our community and put these things down that's numbing us and keep us distracted from what's really going on, I think we will make society better. I work for an organization called For Kids, and we deal with abused, abandoned, neglected children, which led me to my relationship with Elite Foundation that's doing something in a major way, creating opportunities and treating these kids that's being taken advantage of. Working for 4Kids, we have a place called Mercy Place, and in that, I found there's a population of young girls from 12 to 17 that need to be protected, and the vulnerabilities and how easy it is that they get caught in sex trafficking. That was new to me, the term was new to me, and we're only talking about 3.5 years ago. And in doing my work for 4Kids, it put me in a position to try to engage the community to support programs. So trying to learn more about that, I heard and met Angel Carter, who spoke or will be speaking today. And after hearing that story and learning that this is things that's happening, I said, what is happening with men? How is that possible? How do people think they could get away with that? So my goal was to just get involved with men any way I can to try to make a difference. And that led me to a lead and my role with the Guardians of Hope, which is our program that go out to encourage men to not just be aware of what's going on and get on track and get involved in the community and mentoring, but also supporting and doing their job to make sure that our communities are safe. It's important that men talk about things that really matter, things that's really going to improve our society, improve our community, things that we can do in our community instead of saying we need the government to do it, or we need the church to do it. We need all of those things, but also we need men to do it in our communities. And I'm talking about at the home level, at the community level, at the local level, state level. And I think that way we could be effective, we could be strong, and most importantly, we could raise a generation of children that will know that they're loved and they will be able to live out their destiny and their purpose without carrying the burden of traumas that's created by the man being out of the home.
And I am just one of the many survivors that Elite Foundation has been able to help. Around 5 years ago, when I was 20 years old, I was in the modeling industry, very actively and living in New York City. And during that time, I actually fell into human trafficking because the modeling agency that was taking care of us was actually a human trafficking ring. And they ended up kidnapping and taking us as a result. And to be honest with you, I never thought that it would happen to someone like me, especially when my family was a true middle-class family. My mother's in the medical industry and my father does things with computer software. I just never thought it would happen to me. I wasn't involved in drugs. I wasn't someone that drank or partied, and it still affected my life. And I've realized throughout the years that that's a common thing. It can happen to anybody. So when it happened to me, it left me feeling empty. These people had physically attacked me, sexually assaulted me. I was beaten, I was tortured in a lot of different types of ways. And it left me barren. As far as emotionally, I wasn't there anymore. I had lost my identity. I battled PTSD problems. I didn't want to keep living. And that's probably the most devastating part of it, because I lost my relationship with my Creator during that time. And it just, for a year and a half, felt empty. I was alone for the first year and a half. I didn't have anyone to reach out to. I tried to contact police. I tried to get medical help, and I tried to just even pretend that nothing ever happened. And all of those things weren't working. So I actually started journaling at the time, and I wrote down all of these night terrors I was having. I wrote down all of the pain I was feeling, and it would eventually become Model Stop Traffic, which is my book about how all of this happened to me. And it would eventually become a bestseller. But before that, I would actually come into contact with Elite Foundation in a very, very peculiar way, in an email thread that I never thought I would even check, but it did change my course of my life. And it changed just everything for me. When I first met Jessica and Wendy from the Elite Foundation, I came to them as probably the hardest task that they could imagine. I couldn't love them. I couldn't even love myself at the time, just because of everything that had happened to me personally. And they just loved me. They took me in as family. They helped me find resources. They honestly just showed me that there are people out there that care about human trafficking victims, and they care about human trafficking survivors, and they're willing to actually do something about this problem. Elite Foundation is making moves, and I'm being just beyond honored to be part of that fight against human trafficking. And I'm actually being sent to the French government right now to actually talk about human trafficking laws in the modeling industry with the French government. Thank you guys for influencing my life so much. Thank you guys for just renewing my whole entire soul and helping me develop that relationship with Christ again.